Deep in the shadows of crumbling ruins, carved into weathered stones, and hidden beneath layers of dust, strange symbols whisper secrets we still can't fully understand. Some are elegant swirls, others jagged lines, and a few look almost like faces staring back at us across thousands of years. These aren't just random scratches, they're puzzles left behind by ancient hands, messages meant to last, though their meanings have slipped through our fingers like sand. Imagine standing in front of one of these carvings, running your fingers over its grooves, feeling the weight of the questions it holds. Who made this? What were they trying to say? And why did they go to such lengths to ensure it would survive long after their civilization faded into history? For centuries, historians and archaeologists have been piecing together the stories behind 30 of the most baffling symbols ever discovered in ancient ruins. Some appear in temples buried by time, others on forgotten artifacts pulled from the earth, and a few in places so remote their discovery felt like stumbling upon a hidden chapter of human history. The strangest part, many of these symbols appear across different cultures, continents, and even eras separated by oceans and hundreds of years, yet eerily similar. Could they be linked? Were ancient civilizations sharing knowledge we've yet to uncover? Or is there something deeper, something almost universal in these designs? This journey will take us from the labyrinthine caves of prehistoric artists to the towering monuments of lost empires, each symbol a breadcrumb leading us closer to understanding the minds of those who came before us. Some hint at forgotten gods, others at celestial events, and a few might even be early forms of writing codes waiting to be cracked. Along the way, we'll explore why even the brightest modern scholars still argue over their meanings and why some believe these symbols hold power beyond mere decoration. So settle in. What you're about to see will challenge everything you thought you knew about the ancient world, and maybe, just maybe, leave you with more questions than answers. Because the truth is, some mysteries weren't meant to be solved easily. They were meant to make us wonder. Among all the enigmatic symbols ever uncovered, few captivate the imagination like the Phaistos Disc. Unearthed in 1908 within the ruins of a Minoan palace on the Greek island of Crete, this circular clay tablet, roughly the size of a modern dinner plate, holds one of history's most stubborn secrets. Its surface is crammed with 45 distinct symbols, pressed into the clay in a tight spiral that coils inward like a serpent swallowing its own tail. From human figures and birds to abstract shapes resembling axes and flowers, each tiny imprint feels like a deliberate piece of a message we're desperate to read. What makes this artifact so maddening? For starters, it's utterly unique. No other object like it has ever been found in Minoan excavations, and the symbols don't match any known writing system from the era. The precision of the stamped characters suggests they were made with reusable molds, an astonishingly modern technique for a piece crafted over 3,000 years ago. Was this the work of a lone genius or evidence of a lost tradition wiped away by time? Theories about its purpose range from the practical to the mystical. Some scholars argue it's a religious hymn, meant to be sung during rituals in the labyrinthine corridors of Knossos. Others believe it could be an ancient shopping list or a treaty between kings, though why someone would go to such elaborate lengths for mundane record-keeping is anyone's guess. The most tantalizing idea, that it's a celestial calendar with the spiral mirroring the cycles of the moon or the path of a long-forgotten star. But here's the twist: every attempt to crack its code has led to dead ends. Even the famed Linear B script, deciphered in the 1950s, offers no key to understanding the disk's symbols. The Minoans left us sprawling palaces, vibrant frescoes, and intricate pottery, yet this single object remains a locked door with no handle. Perhaps that's why it haunts us. It's not just a puzzle, it's a whisper from a world that refuses to speak plainly. and until someone, somewhere, stumbles upon its twin, the Phaistos Disc will keep its secrets locked in clay, spinning silently through the centuries. Long before the pyramids cast shadows over Egypt, a civilization thrived along the Danube River, etching mysterious symbols into clay that would outlast empires. The Vinca culture, flourishing over 7,000 years ago in what's now Serbia and Romania, left behind hundreds of artifacts incised with angular lines, crosses, and spirals, a silent code that predates even the cuneiform of Mesopotamia. These marks, known as the Vinca symbols, aren't just random scratches. They repeat in patterns across pottery, figurines, and tablets, clustered in ways that suggest intention, maybe even language. What sets these symbols apart is their staggering age. They appear centuries before any other known writing system, pushing the boundaries of how far back we trace humanity's first attempts to record ideas. Some resemble later alphabets, like a striking parallel between a Vinca zigzag and a Greek lambda, or their branching symbol that echoes early runes. Could this be evidence of a forgotten script that influenced cultures across millennia? Or are we seeing a shared visual language bubbling up independently in distant corners of the world? The debate among scholars is fierce. One camp argues these marks are proto-writing, symbols representing objects or concepts, like an ancient emoji system used for trade or rituals. Excavations reveal many were pressed into clay before firing, often near grain stores or sacred sites, hinting at practical or spiritual purposes. Others insist they're purely decorative, a visual rhythm with no hidden meaning. But then there's the curious case of the Dispilio tablet, a wooden artifact from northern Greece bearing similar symbols. Dated to around 5300 BCE, it suggests the Vinca script, if it is a script, spread farther than anyone imagined. Perhaps the most haunting question isn't whether these symbols could be read, but why their system vanished without a trace. The Vinca culture declined abruptly, their villages abandoned, their innovations buried. Did invaders erase their knowledge, or was their writing always meant to be ephemeral, a sacred shorthand understood only by initiates? Standing before these angular glyphs today, we're left with the eerie sense of a conversation cut short, a thread snipped from history's tapestry. And yet, their very existence rewrites the story of human communication, proving that the urge to mark meaning onto the world is far older and far more universal than we ever suspected. On the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, where towering stone figures gaze emptily toward the horizon, another mystery lies hidden in plain sight: the Rongorongo script. Carved into weathered wooden tablets, these intricate glyphs swirl and twist like the waves that once carried Polynesian voyagers to this tiny speck of land. Birds, fish, humanoid figures, and geometric shapes march in careful rows, their precise arrangements suggesting more than mere decoration. Yet despite over a century of study, no one alive today can read them. These tablets are the last whispers of a lost literacy, a written language that may hold the key to understanding Easter Island's tragic unraveling. The sheer existence of Rongorongo is a puzzle. Most remote Polynesian cultures relied solely on oral tradition, so why did the Rapa Nui alone develop such an elaborate script? Some scholars point to the island's extreme isolation, theorizing that without outside contact, the community turned inward, creating a unique system to record genealogies or sacred chants. Others propose a darker origin. The glyphs might have been inspired by European writing after Spanish sailors presented a proclamation of annexation in 1770. But this theory crumbles when examining the tablet's deep grooves, worn smooth by generations of handling proof they predate foreign contact. Could Rongorongo have sprung up independently, a linguistic spark ignited by some forgotten genius? The symbols themselves are as enigmatic as their origins. Some glyphs resemble petroglyphs found on volcanic rocks across the island, linking them to ancestral stories. Others mirror motifs from across Polynesia, like the frigate bird, a messenger between worlds in many Pacific cultures. but it's the tablet's survival that's most astonishing. When droughts and deforestation triggered societal collapse, when clans toppled each other's moe in desperate wars, these wooden records were somehow preserved. Were they too sacred to burn, or did someone, amidst the chaos, understand their importance? Tragedy struck in the 1860s when Peruvian slavers raided the island, carrying off nearly half its population, including the last known masters of Rongorongo. By the time missionaries arrived, only a handful of elders could vaguely recall the glyphs' meanings, and none could fully interpret them. One priest documented a haunting account, an elderly man tracing the symbols with trembling fingers, murmuring fragments of chants before falling silent, the knowledge dying with him. Today, 26 battered tablets remain, scattered in museums worldwide. Modern linguists have identified recurring patterns, possible genealogies, or lunar calendars, but without a Rosetta Stone to unlock their context, Rongorongo's true message may be gone forever. What lingers is the unsettling parallel between the script's silence and the island's fate. Just as the Rapa Nui carved these glyphs into wood, they also carved their fate into the land, consuming resources until their world shrank to ruin. The tablets now feel like a warning, not just about deforestation or warfare, but about how fragile knowledge can be. One generation's wisdom becomes the next's mystery, leaving us to piece together meaning from the echoes. Perhaps that's why Rongorongo captivates us, not just as an unsolved code, but as a mirror. It reflects our own fear that civilizations, no matter how brilliant, can forget themselves. Buried beneath the dry soil of modern-day Pakistan and northwest India, the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro hide one of archaeology's most enduring riddles, the Indus Valley script. Unlike the grand monuments of Egypt or Mesopotamia, this civilization left behind no towering temples or golden tombs. Instead, their legacy is etched into countless small steatite seals, pottery fragments, and copper tablets, each bearing clusters of strange, elegant symbols. Over 400 distinct glyphs have been catalogued, from stick-figure humans and fish to abstract shapes resembling ladders and forks, all meticulously carved with a precision that suggests these marks held immense importance. But here's the catch: after a century of study, we still don't know if they're words, numbers, religious icons, or something else entirely. The seals themselves are masterpieces of miniature art. Take the famous unicorn seal discovered in Mohenjo-Daro. At first glance, it seems straightforward. A mythical beast with a single horn stands before a ritual object, while a row of symbols marches across the top. But nothing about it is simple. The unicorn might represent an aurochs or a stylized bull, its horn an artistic convention lost to time. The symbols above it, typically 5 or 6 glyphs, appear in varying orders across different seals, like phrases rearranged. Some scholars argue this is proof of a writing system, while others counter that true writing should show more repetition and grammatical structure. Without a bilingual text, a Rosetta Stone for the Indus, we're left chasing shadows. Decipherment efforts hit a wall early on. The inscriptions are frustratingly short, averaging just 4 or 5 symbols, with none longer than 20. Compare that to Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets crammed with hundreds of characters, and the challenge becomes clear. Are these merchants' marks, clan symbols, or prayers condensed into shorthand? One tantalizing clue comes from the seals' distribution. Many were found near city gates and trade goods, hinting they might have functioned like Bronze Age barcodes, stamped onto clay tags to identify shipments of grain, cloth, or precious stones. Yet if that's true, why do some symbols appear exclusively on ritual objects or in elite quarters? The debate over whether these glyphs constitute a true script splits academia. Proponents of the linguistic theory point to statistical patterns. Certain symbols cluster like prefixes or suffixes, suggesting syntax. Critics fire back with the Emperor's Code problem. If you analyze enough abstract patterns, you'll find illusory structure, like seeing faces in clouds. Then there's the wild card, the discovery of similar symbols at distant sites like Dolavera, spaced centuries apart. Did the script evolve over time, or was it a stable system unchanged for millennia? What's haunting is how abruptly the Indus cities fell silent. By 1800 BC, their streets lay empty, their seals unused. Whether drought, invasion, or internal collapse doomed them, the knowledge of their symbols vanished with them. Today, the glyphs remain frozen in clay, their meaning just beyond reach. Perhaps the greatest lesson isn't in deciphering them, but in recognizing how much we still don't know about a civilization that rivaled Egypt and Sumer, a reminder that history's ledger isn't always written in ink, but sometimes in questions. In the dense jungles of Veracruz, Mexico, where the air hums with the whispers of vanished empires, a farmer's shovel struck something unexpected in the 1990s, not gold or jade, but a rectangular slab of serpentine stone, its surface etched with rows of strange, looping symbols. This was the Cascajal block, a discovery that rewrote the history of the Americas. Dated to around 900 BC, it's the oldest known example of writing in the Western Hemisphere, predating the Maya script by centuries. But what makes it truly remarkable isn't just its age, it's the way these 62 symbols dance between art and language, offering a tantalizing glimpse into the minds of the Olmec, the so-called mother culture of Mesoamerica. The symbols themselves are a mix of the familiar and the utterly alien. Some resemble maize plants or insects, echoing later Zapotec and Maya glyphs. Others are abstract zigzags, circles with dots, shapes that might represent tools or celestial bodies. Unlike the rigid columns of Egyptian hieroglyphs, these symbols sprawl across the block in loose, uneven rows, as if the carver followed the natural flow of thought rather than a strict grid. This fluidity has led to fierce debates. Are we looking at a true writing system, or something more like proto-writing, a bridge between simple pictographs and a full-fledged script? The block's connection to the Olmec is undeniable. Found near the ancient capital of San Lorenzo, it shares stylistic touches with other Olmec artifacts like the iconic colossal heads. But here's the twist: no other Olmec writing has been found, leaving the Cascajal block as a solitary enigma. Some scholars argue it's a fraud, pointing to its lone discovery without surrounding archaeological context. Yet microscopic analysis reveals where patterns consistent with ancient tools, and the serpentine itself matches local quarries. If it's a fake, it's a masterpiece crafted with impossible precision. What's haunting is how these symbols hint at a lost continuity. Several glyphs bear uncanny resemblances to later Maya signs, suggesting the Olmec might have planted the seeds of Mesoamerican writing. Imagine a scribe in Chichen Itza 1,000 years later carving a glyph that first took shape under Olmec hands, but without more examples, the thread remains frayed. The block symbols could be the opening lines of a story we'll never read in full, a language that flourished briefly, then vanished beneath the weight of time, leaving only this single, silent stone to speak for an entire civilization's voice. Perhaps the most poignant detail is the block's size. Roughly the dimensions of a laptop, it fits comfortably in 2 hands. Whoever held it last likely understood its power, whether as a sacred text, a royal decree, or a merchant's record. Now it sits in a museum, its symbols still whispering, still waiting for the day someone might finally understand. Beneath the still waters of Lake Castoria in northern Greece, a chance discovery in 1992 revealed a relic so fragile, its very existence defied time. The Dispilio tablet, a wooden slab roughly the size of a hardcover book, surfaced during an archaeological survey, its surface etched with symbols that hadn't seen daylight in over 7,000 years. Preserved by the lake's oxygen-starved mud, the tablet bears a grid of angular marks, lines crossing at sharp angles, branching forms like tree limbs, and clusters of dots arranged with deliberate spacing. These aren't random carvings, They're a coordinated system, one that predates the earliest known Greek writing by 4,000 years and whispers of a sophistication we're only beginning to grasp. What makes the Dispilio symbols so revolutionary is their context. Found among the remains of a lakeside Neolithic village, the tablet shares its era with the Vinca culture's markings, yet their styles diverge dramatically. Where Vinca symbols are bold and muscular, Dispilios are precise, almost surgical, arranged in neat rows that suggest a record-keeping function. Some researchers propose these glyphs could be ancestors to Linear A, the undeciphered script of the Minoans. The resemblance is faint but tantalizing. Certain Dispilio strokes mirror Linear A's angular forms, as if the later scribes unconsciously echoed a visual language lost beneath the waves of history. Preservation is the tablet's cruelest irony. Unlike stone or clay, wood disintegrates rapidly when exposed to air. The moment it was lifted from its muddy tomb, the clock started ticking. Today, it's stored in a climate-controlled case, its symbols slowly fading despite modern technology's best efforts. This fragility raises a haunting question. How many other wooden tablets, potential keys to understanding prehistoric Europe, have rotted away unnoticed? The Dispilio tablet might be a lone survivor, a single page from a library that turned to dust millennia ago. The symbols themselves hint at a practical purpose. Excavations at the site revealed grain storage pits and animal pens, leading some scholars to theorize the markings tracked harvests or livestock. Imagine a Neolithic farmer notching the tablet as a tally, each line representing a basket of wheat or a newborn lamb. But others argue the symbols are too abstract for simple accounting. Their repetition in ritual spaces suggests a dual role, perhaps blending commerce with cosmology, where a single mark could signify both 20 bushels and blessing of the Earth Mother. What lingers is the unsettling realization that this humble slab of wood might rewrite the story of European literacy. If these symbols are indeed a form of writing, their complexity implies a society far more organized and interconnected than we ever imagined for the Neolithic Balkans. The Dispilio tablet doesn't just challenge the timeline of written communication. It forces us to confront how much of humanity's early ingenuity might have been carved into materials too perishable to endure. In its silent glyphs, we hear the echo of a truth both humbling and thrilling. Civilization's oldest stories weren't written in stone, they were written in whispers. In a quiet corner of Transylvania, buried for millennia beneath the rolling hills of Romania, 3 small clay tablets ignited a firestorm in the world of archaeology. Known as the Tartaria tablets, these palm-sized artifacts unearthed in 1961 bear markings that at first glance seem impossibly out of place. Dated to around 5,300 BCE, their symbols spiral and cluster in ways that echo Mesopotamian cuneiform, a script not supposed to exist for another 2,000 years. If genuine, they could append everything we know about the birth of writing. But from the moment they surfaced, the tablets have been shrouded in suspicion, their authenticity debated with an intensity usually reserved for art forgeries or religious relics. What makes these tablets so contentious starts with their symbols. One depicts a horned animal resembling Mesopotamian depictions of deities. Another shows a figure holding a scepter, flanked by what might be altars or temples. The most striking bears rows of angular marks arranged in grids uncannily similar to early Sumerian accounting tablets. The problem: Sumer lies over 1,000 miles to the southeast, and while the Tartaria finds were carbon dated to the same era as Sumer's earliest settlements, the two cultures supposedly had no contact. Could writing have arisen independently in 2 distant regions simultaneously? Or does this imply a forgotten network of trade or migration stretching across prehistoric Europe and Asia? Skeptics pounce on the tablet's discovery context. They were found near the skeletal remains of what might have been a ritual sacrifice, their placement raising red flags. No other examples of similar symbols have been excavated in the surrounding Vinca culture sites, making them a linguistic island in an otherwise symbol-rich archaeological landscape. Some experts argue the markings are simply ownership tags or ritual objects, not true writing. Others go further, suggesting the tablets might be modern hoaxes planted to push nationalist narratives during Cold War-era Romania. Yet defenders counter with microscopic analysis. The tablet's clay matches local sources, and their patina shows millennia of chemical changes impossible to fake. Even the symbol's depth and tool marks align with ancient techniques. Then there's the sheer oddity of the forger's gamble. Why invent a script that predates any known writing system, inviting relentless scrutiny? The truth might lie in between. Some scholars propose the tablets represent not full-fledged writing but a symbolic reservoir shared across early agricultural societies, a visual language of power and ritual that occasionally converged across vast distances. What lingers is the haunting possibility that our understanding of prehistory is far patchier than we admit. If the Tartaria tablets are genuine, they hint at a world where ideas flowed along routes we've yet to map, where symbols could leap cultures like sparks across dry grass. But if they're forgeries, they've exposed something equally profound: our desperate desire to find patterns, to believe that even 7,000 years ago, someone was trying to speak to us, and that we might still, against all odds, learn to listen. In the quiet dirt of an ancient burial site near China's Yellow River, archaeologists unearthed a collection of tortoise shells that would rewrite the earliest chapters of human communication. Dating back nearly 9,000 years, these shells found at Jiahu, a Paleogang culture settlement, bear meticulous carved markings unlike anything else from their era. Some are simple crosses and lines, others resemble modern Chinese characters like I or sun, arranged in sequences that suggest more than random decoration. What makes these symbols so electrifying is their age. They predate the famous oracle bones of the Shang dynasty by 4,000 years. Could these be the primordial seeds from which Chinese writing eventually grew? The Jiahu shells weren't just scattered finds. They surfaced in graves, often placed near the deceased's head or hands, hinting at a spiritual purpose. Imagine a shaman or elder inking these symbols onto the shells before ritual burials. Each mark a bridge between the living and the ancestors. Microscopic analysis reveals the carvings were made with stone tools, their edges worn smooth from handling over generations. This wasn't casual graffiti, it was deliberate, repeated, and valued. But are they writing? Scholars divide sharply. One faction points to the symbol's resemblance to later Chinese characters, proposing their proto-writing, a system where marks represented concepts rather than sounds. The symbol resembling I, for example, might have signaled vision or vigilance in rituals. Opponents counter that without longer texts or clear grammatical patterns, the shells could just be ritual tallies or clan signatures. What tips the scales is the discovery of similar symbols on pottery and bone tools at Jiahu, suggesting a shared visual language across mediums. The most tantalizing clue lies in their arrangement. Unlike the isolated symbols of the Vinca or Dispilio, Jiahu's markings sometimes appear in pairs or triplets, like early attempts at syntax. One shell even shows 16 distinct symbols in rows, a potential sentence frozen in time. If this is writing, it's writing in its infancy, pulsing with possibility but not yet fully formed. What haunts researchers is the gap. After Jiahu's decline around 5,700 BCE, such symbols vanish for millennia before resurfacing in the Shang dynasty's oracle bones. Did knowledge of these markings survive orally, passed down through generations until someone finally connected them to spoken language? Or was the Jiahu experiment a dead end, its symbols forgotten until reinvented independently centuries later? The shells refuse to say, yet their very existence proves that the human urge to encode meaning into marks is far older, far more universal than we ever dreamed. High in the Rhodope Mountains of Bulgaria, where wind carves secrets into limestone cliffs, a rough-hewn inscription has defied explanation for nearly a century. Discovered in 1928 near the village of Satovo, this sprawling tableau of 50-plus symbols stretches across a rock face like a silent chorus, some characters angular as runes, others fluid as dancing figures, a few resembling celestial bodies or strange tools. Unlike the neat rows of Mediterranean scripts, the Satovo glyphs sprawl in every direction, as if urgency outweighed order when they were carved. Theories about their origins span the plausible to the fantastical. Mainstream archaeologists note similarities to Thracian votive inscriptions, suggesting a religious plea to gods like Zalmoxis, the enigmatic deity worshipped in hidden mountain sanctuaries. Others spot echoes of Phrygian script, hinting at cultural exchange between Balkan tribes and Anatolia's Iron Age kingdoms. But the wildest claims come from fringe researchers who point to symbols resembling modern astronomical diagrams, a line of dots matching the Orion constellation, a spiral that could chart planetary motion. Could this be ancient star lore or, as some fervently insist, evidence of contact with otherworldly visitors? Dating the inscription is its own puzzle. Unlike pottery or bones, rock carvings resist carbon dating. The patina on the grooves suggests great age, but the Rhodopes have been a crossroads for millennia. Thracians, Romans, Byzantines, even medieval hermits all left marks here. One tantalizing clue lies in the carving technique. The glyphs were pecked into the stone with metal tools, placing them firmly in the Iron Age or later. Yet their stylistic rawness feels older, as if preserving traditions from a time before writing was standardized. The most compelling analysis comes from linguists who have matched 5 symbols to known Thracian alphabets, enough to suggest language, not doodles. One recurring mark resembles the San letter found in Greek colonies along the Black Sea, while a hooked symbol parallels Phrygian glyphs for Earth. But without more examples or a bilingual key, the inscription remains a locked door. Local folklore adds another layer. Shepherds long believed the site was a speaking stone, where ancestors whispered through the symbols during thunderstorms. Perhaps the true mystery isn't who made the Satovo inscription, but why it stands alone. Most ancient scripts leave trails: clay tablets, tomb engravings, merchant ledgers. This is a solitary cry in stone, untouched by later hands, waiting for someone to listen across the centuries. Whether it's a prayer, a warning, or a star map lost to time, its power lies in that stubborn silence, the way it refuses to confess its secrets, even as the wind erodes its edges, letter by letter. Buried in a French farmer's field in 1924, the Glozel tablet sparked one of archaeology's fiercest controversies, a battle of science, ego, and national pride that still simmers today. What began as a routine plowing session near Vichy unearthed ceramic fragments, some no larger than a playing card, each etched with bizarre symbols resembling a chaotic blend of Phoenician, Iberian, and even prehistoric marks. Ovals slashed with lines, stick-figure animals, and geometric grids covered their surfaces, but it was their staggering claimed age that set off fireworks. Initial dating suggested they might be 3,000 years old, potentially rewriting the history of European writing overnight. The Glozel Affair, as it came to be called, quickly spiraled into chaos. Establishment scholars branded the tablets crude forgeries, pointing to the mishmash of symbols as proof. No known ancient culture combined these styles. Accusations flew that the farmer's family had crafted them to profit from gullible collectors. But then, eminent archaeologists began endorsing the finds, including Salomon Reinach, director of France's National Antiquities Museum. Soon, the debate wasn't just academic, it was personal. Conferences devolved into shouting matches, careers were ruined, and lawsuits piled up like excavation rubble. Modern technology should have settled the dispute, but Glozel only grew murkier. Thermoluminescence tests in the 1970s dated some tablets to the medieval era, others to the Iron Age, and a few to the 1920s, fueling the forgery theory. Yet recent analyses reveal unsettling details. The clay's mineral composition matches local geology, and microscopic wear patterns show weathering consistent with centuries underground. Some symbols, like a zigzag resembling early Basque script, have parallels in genuine artifacts. The most plausible explanation: Glozel might be a palimpsest of history, some tablets authentic, others tampered with or forged in later centuries, creating a toxic mix that defies easy categorization. What lingers isn't just doubt over the tablets, but their shadow on archaeology itself. Glozel exposed how easily scholarship can be warped by nationalism. French experts desperate for a pre-Celtic mother script, skeptics clinging to rigid narratives. The symbols, if even partly genuine, hint at a forgotten literacy in prehistoric Gaul, a thread snipped by time, but their greatest lesson might be humility. Sometimes the past doesn't surrender its secrets, it leaves us with questions that outlast our tools, our tempers, and our need for tidy answers. In a musty Hungarian library, tucked between medieval herbals and weathered maps, lies a book that has defied every attempt to read its secrets, the Rohonc Codex. Its 200 pages pulse with dense, looping symbols unlike any known script, crammed between bizarre illustrations of battles, religious scenes, and figures clad in robes that hint at no single time or place. Discovered in the early 19th century, this manuscript has been called Europe's Voynich for good reason. Both books mock our attempts to understand them, their symbols swirling just beyond the edges of comprehension. But while the Voynich Manuscript at least offers botanical drawings that feel vaguely familiar, the Rohonc Codex plunges us into full surrealism, its pages filled with crescent moons stabbed by spears, crucified figures with multiple arms, and buildings that seem to defy gravity. Theories about its origins spiral as wildly as its glyphs. Some scholars trace its symbols to the Dacians, an ancient people who once roamed the Carpathian Basin before Roman conquest. Their language remains largely lost, making the Codex a tantalizing candidate for a surviving text, except the illustrations include anachronisms like medieval armor and what might be gunpowder weapons. Others argue it's a Renaissance-era cipher crafted by a bored nobleman or secret society. The most compelling detail: the script's direction shifts unpredictably. Some lines read left to right like Latin, others right to left like Arabic, and a few even spiral inward like the Phaistos Disc. This isn't just a code, it's a labyrinth designed to disorient. Decipherment attempts have bordered on obsession. 19th century Hungarian linguist Károly Szobo claimed to crack it, announcing it was an early Bible translation until critics noted his translation borrowed heavily from existing scriptures without explaining the manuscript's weirder imagery. Modern computer analysis reveals statistical patterns resembling natural language, yet no algorithm can match the symbols to any known alphabet, living or dead. One team proposed the text is a hoax, but then why would a forger invent 400 distinct glyphs, many used only once or twice? The Codex's paper and ink have been carbon dated to the 16th century, ruling out modern mischief. What makes the Rohonc Codex uniquely frustrating is its occasional glimpses of legibility. A handful of symbols resemble runes or Armenian letters, teasing connections that dissolve under scrutiny. Even its illustrations offer contradictory clues, crosses suggesting Christianity coexist with pagan tree worship and what might be Hindu deities, the only consensus. Whoever created this text didn't want it read casually. The glyph's density, averaging 10 per line, would have demanded immense effort to carve or write, implying a purpose far beyond idle doodling. Perhaps it's a sacred text for a cult that left no other traces, or a mad polymath's attempt to fuse every script they'd encountered into a private language. Now housed under bulletproof glass in Budapest, the Codex continues to guard its secrets. Unlike other undeciphered texts, it hasn't even surrendered the comfort of categorization, not clearly religious, historical, or scientific. It exists in a category of one, a paper-bound black hole swallowing every hypothesis thrown at it, and that perhaps is its most unsettling quality. In a world where we've mapped genomes and probed distant galaxies, this unassuming book remains a stubborn reminder. Some doors, once opened, lead only to darker corridors. On the sun-baked coast of ancient Lebanon, where cedar ships once carried goods across the Mediterranean, 10 weathered stone fragments hold the key to one of writing's greatest disappearing acts, the Byblos syllabary. Unearthed in the ruins of one of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities, these inscriptions from 1800 BC are tantalizingly close to legibility. Their symbols curve and angle with the elegance of early Phoenician script, yet they remain stubbornly silent, a cipher locked behind the frustrating scarcity of samples. What makes these markings so electrifying is their position at the crossroads of history. Byblos was the beating heart of Bronze Age trade, a hub where Egyptian papyrus met Mesopotamian tin and Minoan pottery mingled with Anatolian silver. The syllabary's symbols, ranging from stylized ox heads to zigzagging water lines, look like prototypes of the Phoenician alphabet that would later revolutionize writing. But are these the clumsy first steps toward that breakthrough, or a dead-end experiment forgotten by time? Decipherment efforts slam into a wall of almost. Unlike the Rosetta Stone with its parallel texts, the Byblos inscriptions stand alone. Their brevity is torture. Most are just 5 or 6 symbols long, offering no recurring phrases to anchor translation. One theory suggests their monumental dedications, perhaps kings boasting of temples built or battles won. Another posits their merchant contracts, the Bronze Age equivalent of shipping manifests pressed into stone. The cruelest irony, we may have the cultural context but lack the critical mass. Imagine holding 10 random pages from a library. You might recognize a word or two, but the story stays out of reach. Until another inscription surfaces, these symbols remain frozen between discovery and understanding, a reminder that sometimes history teases us with whispers just loud enough to keep us listening. High in the Andes, where thin air carries echoes of a lost empire, the Inca left behind a language unlike any other one, woven not in ink or stone, but in strands of dyed cotton and knotted threads. These quipus, often mistaken for simple decorative chords, were in fact a sophisticated recording system, a tactile language of numbers and narratives that vanished under the weight of Spanish conquest. Imagine holding one in your hands, the texture of alpaca fiber between your fingers, each knot's tightness and position a deliberate choice, every color a coded message. To the untrained eye, they're just strings. To the Inca, they were the empire's living memory. The quipus' genius lay in its layered simplicity. A primary chord anchored dozens of pendant strings, each knotted in clusters representing numerical values. A single knot stood for 10, a figure 8 for 1, and the spacing between clusters could denote hundreds or thousands, but numbers were just the beginning. Colors transformed these chords into storytelling tools: crimson for warriors, gold for the sun god in tide, deep green for harvests. The Quipucamayok, the empire's revered record keepers, could likely read them aloud like epic poems, tracking grain stores one moment and reciting royal genealogies the next. Some scholars argue certain quipus even encoded non-numerical information, myths, laws, or tribute lists using knot sequences as phonetic cues, though this remains fiercely debated. What's heartbreaking is how much we've lost. Spanish priests intent on erasing pagan practices burned quipus by the thousands in the 16th century. Only about 600 survive today, mostly from graves or dry caves where the climate preserved them. Even then, decoding is a puzzle. Without living Quipucamayok to explain the system, researchers must reverse engineer meaning from patterns. Some breakthroughs have come from matching quipus to colonial census records, like a knot cluster listing 82 households beside a Spanish scribe's note of the same number. Other clues emerge from quipus found with their original storage bags, the fibers still bearing traces of corn or coca leaves, hinting at what they once tracked. The greatest mystery isn't just how Quipus worked, but why they endured when other empires used writing. Perhaps the answer lies in the Inca's oral tradition. In a culture where speech was sacred, the quipu might have served as a mnemonic device, a physical trigger for memorized knowledge, flexible enough to adapt across the empire's many languages. Or maybe it reflects something deeper about how the Inca saw the world. Where parchment tears and paint fades, knots endure. They tighten with time, their message growing more secure, not less, a fitting metaphor for a civilization built on permanence amidst mountains that rewrite themselves with every landslide. Today, modern Andean communities keep the quipu's legacy alive in subtle ways. Shepherds still knot cords to count livestock, and protesters have hung giant quipus in Lima as plazas as symbols of resistance. Each surviving example is a challenge flung across centuries, daring us to listen closer, because somewhere in those tangled threads, pressed between knots we can't yet untie, lies the voice of an empire that refused to be silenced. Buried in the fertile lowlands of Bolivia, far from the deserts of Mesopotamia, a humble ceramic bowl sits at the center of one of archaeology's most heated debates. The Fuente Magna bowl, discovered near Lake Titicaca in the 1950s, is unremarkable at first glance, its reddish-brown surface weathered by time. But tilted toward the light and the inscriptions emerge, intricate symbols that look uncannily like Proto-Sumerian cuneiform, the wedge-shaped script of ancient Iraq. How could writing from a civilization 4,000 miles away and 2,000 years older appear on an artifact in South America? The question has torn scholars into warring camps, with accusations of forgery clashing against whispers of a lost chapter in human history. The bowl's symbols are its lightning rod. Alongside local geometric designs, two distinct scripts appear, one resembling the hieroglyphs of the ancient Tiwanaku culture, the other eerily close to early Mesopotamian signs. One segment mirrors the Sumerian symbol for gods, while another looks like their word for water. Even the bowl's craftsmanship raises eyebrows. Its curved base suggests ritual use, possibly for libations, a practice shared by Sumerian priests. The implications are staggering. If authentic, Fuente Magna could rewrite trade routes, proving that Bronze Age civilizations crossed oceans millennia before Columbus. Skeptics pounce on the lack of context. The bowl was found by a farmer, not archaeologists, its original burial site undocumented. No other Sumerian artifacts have surfaced in the Andes, leaving Fuente Magna as a linguistic island. Critics argue the symbols are superficial resemblances, their similarities exaggerated by wishful thinking. They point to the bowl's porous ceramic, typical of local pottery, as proof it was made in Bolivia, but concede its inscriptions could have been added later. One damning theory suggests mid-20th century forgers, inspired by popular books about Sumer, carved the markings to attract collectors, yet defenders counter with metallurgical evidence. Trace elements in the clay match Lake Titicaca's mineral profile, and patina in the grooves indicate centuries of natural wear. Even more compelling are the symbol's execution. Proto-Sumerian cuneiform evolved rapidly. The bowl's signs match specific early forms unknown outside niche academia until recent decades. Would a forger in rural Bolivia have such obscure knowledge? The truth may lie in a middle ground. Perhaps Fuente Magna reflects not direct contact, but a shared symbolic language among ancient agricultural societies. A global code of circles, lines, and waves that emerged independently. Or maybe it's a rare relic of a seafaring culture like the Phoenicians who could have bridged the continents. For now, the bowl remains an enigma, its inscriptions hovering between proof and provocation. One thing's certain, it refuses to fit neatly into history's boxes, a stubborn reminder that the past is far stranger and more interconnected than we dare imagine. Among all the artifacts that challenge our understanding of ancient writing, few are as contentious as the 3 small clay tablets unearthed near the Romanian village of Tartaria. Discovered in a pit alongside charred human bones, a detail that still sends chills down archaeologists' spines. These palm-sized pieces bear symbols that seem to defy both time and geography. At first glance, their markings echo the angular glyphs of the Vinca culture, a Neolithic society that thrived along the Danube over 7,000 years ago. But look closer and something unsettling emerges. Several symbols bear a striking resemblance to early Sumerian cuneiform, wedge-like impressions that shouldn't appear in Europe for another 2 millennia. This isn't just a coincidence, it's a temporal paradox pressed into clay. The controversy begins with dating. Radiocarbon analysis of the bones and ash surrounding the tablets initially placed them around 5,300 BC, contemporary with Vinca settlements. But skeptics argue the pit could have been disturbed, mixing older artifacts with newer remains. If the tablets are genuinely Neolithic, their implications are staggering. They'd predate the first known Sumerian writing by nearly 2,000 years, forcing us to reconsider where and when humans first crossed the threshold from symbols to script. Imagine a network of knowledge stretching from the Balkans to Mesopotamia, a silent exchange of ideas across continents long before wheels or sails existed. Then there's the script itself, the tablet's most debated symbol. A horned animal resembling a bull mirrors Sumerian depictions of the god Enlil, a deity associated with storms and kingship. Another shows a figure holding a scepter, flanked by what might be altars, a motif eerily similar to Mesopotamian royal seals. But here's the twist: Vinca art is rife with horned creatures and ritual scenes, making it possible these parallels are convergent evolution, not cultural contact. Without more examples, the truth slips through our fingers like the ash the tablets were buried in. What fuels the debate is the tablets' isolation. No other Vinca sites have yielded objects with such concentrated symbolism, leaving Tartaria as a lone anomaly. Critics argue they're ritual objects or property markers, not true writing. Yet their symbols appear in deliberate sequences, clusters of 2 or 3 glyphs repeated across the tablets like an incantation. One even shows a grid of lines reminiscent of later accounting tablets, hinting at a system that tracked more than just spiritual ideas, the most haunting possibility. That these tablets are fragments of a wider tradition lost to time. Neolithic Europe's perishable materials, wood, leather, woven fiber, could have carried countless other inscriptions now turned to dust. Tartaria's clay survived by chance, a fluke of preservation offering us the faintest glimpse of a world where writing may have flickered to life, only to be extinguished for millennia. Whether they're proof of a forgotten script or simply ritual objects with accidental resemblances, their power lies in the questions they force us to confront. How much of history's first drafts have we missed, and how many breakthroughs lie buried, waiting for a farmer's plow or an archaeologist's trowel to bring them back into the light? Buried deep in the rolling hills of southern Illinois, a cache of artifacts emerged in the 1980s that would ignite one of archaeology's most bizarre controversies. Known as the Burrows Cave collection, these carved stones and tablets bore symbols that seemed ripped straight from the temples of ancient Egypt, cartouches resembling royal names, hieroglyphs for sun god Ra, even depictions of pharaohs with distinctly African features. According to their discoverer, Russell Burrows, he stumbled upon them in a hidden cavern while out hiking, a story that quickly unraveled under scrutiny. Yet despite the swirling accusations of forgery, these artifacts refuse to fade quietly into obscurity because their implications, if real, would shatter everything we know about ancient transatlantic contact. The symbols themselves are the heart of the dispute. Mixed among local Native American motifs were clear Libico-Berber script used in North Africa around the 1st millennium BC, and Egyptian hieratic writing, a cursive form of hieroglyphs employed by priests. One tablet even showed a boat with oarsmen flanked by glyphs reading "Westward Journey." Proponents of the artifact's authenticity argue this could record an actual pre-Columbian voyage, perhaps by Nubian sailors blown off course, or even a lost colony of Egyptians. They point to similarities with the controversial Michigan relics, another set of disputed artifacts with Old World inscriptions found halfway across the country. But the red flags pile up fast. Burrows, a former marine and treasure hunter, never revealed the cave's exact location, claiming it was to protect the site from looters. The few archaeologists allowed to examine the artifacts noted modern tool marks and inconsistencies in the patina. Some hieroglyphs were mashed together nonsensically, like someone copying from a book without understanding the syntax. Even more damning, the Libico-Berber script included letters not used until centuries after the supposed cave's sealing. Then there's the artifact's vanishing act. After initial publicity, most of the collection was sold off piecemeal to private collectors, while Burrows published a book detailing wild theories involving secret societies and Templar connections. Today, only scattered photographs and a handful of examined pieces remain, making independent verification nearly impossible. What lingers isn't just doubt, but a deeper question. Why does the idea of transatlantic contact before Columbus captivate us so intensely? Perhaps it's the thrill of rewriting history or the romantic image of intrepid ancient explorers. The Burrows Cave saga taps into that desire even as its credibility crumbles. In the end, these carved stones may be nothing more than a clever hoax, but they're also a mirror, reflecting our endless fascination with the gaps in humanity's story and the lengths we'll go to try and fill them. Off the coast of Japan's westernmost island, Yonaguni, lies a site that blurs the line between geology and archaeology, a massive, angular formation rising from the ocean floor like a sunken citadel. Discovered in 1986 by a diver searching for hammerhead shark habitats, the Yonaguni monument stretches over 150 feet long, its terraced walls and sharp 90-degree angles seeming too precise for nature's handiwork. But what truly ignites debate are its markings, deep, straight grooves that resemble carved channels, a circular depression like a ritual basin, and stair-step patterns climbing the rock face. Could this be the work of an ancient civilization swallowed by the sea, or just an extraordinary quirk of tectonic activity? The monument's most striking features read like an architect's blueprint. Towering pillars form what some call a gateway, while flat platforms extend like ceremonial plazas. One section, nicknamed the Turtle, bears a striking animal silhouette etched into the stone. Proponents of the man-made theory point to these details as evidence of the Jomon people, a prehistoric culture that thrived in Japan from around 14,000 to 300 BCE. Known for their intricate pottery and stone circles, the Jomon had the tools and the maritime skills to potentially shape such a structure. If they did, it would rewrite our understanding of their capabilities, suggesting they engineered on a scale rivaling the pyramids. Skeptics counter with the power of natural forces. Sandstone, the monument's primary rock, often fractures into geometric patterns under ocean currents. The stairs could be parallel bedding planes eroded over millennia, while the carvings might be scars from coral or mollusk activity. Even the monument's location fits a geological explanation. It sits atop an active fault line where seismic shifts could have sheared the rock into uncannily clean planes. Yet some details resist easy dismissal. Dive teams have noted tool marks on certain surfaces, grooves too straight and uniform to match known erosion patterns. Nearby, a stone face with human-like features peers from the depths, its symmetrical eyes and mouth eerily deliberate, and then there's the context. Yonaguni lies near a strait once crossed by Jomon traders, and submerged ruins elsewhere like India's Dwarka or Cuba's underwater city hint that coastal settlements may have vanished beneath rising seas as glaciers melted. The debate crystallizes around one chilling possibility. If the monument is artificial, it's far older than any known Japanese pyramid, dating to a time when sea levels were low enough to expose the site. That would place its construction in the Jarmon's early millennia, making it contemporaneous with Göbekli Tepe, another enigmatic site that defies timelines. Whether natural or carved by hands lost to time, the Yonaguni monument forces us to confront how much of human history might lie underwater, silent and unseen, waiting for the right diver to stumble upon its secrets. Hidden within the Temple of Seti I at Abydos, a set of hieroglyphs etched into the ancient stone has sparked debates that bridge archaeology and science fiction. At first glance, these carvings appear to depict startlingly modern machines: a helicopter, a submarine, even what looks like a futuristic aircraft. The so-called Abydos helicopter glyphs have become a magnet for ancient astronaut theorists, who see them as smoking gun evidence of advanced technology in pharaonic Egypt. But the truth behind these mysterious symbols is both more mundane and far more fascinating than extraterrestrial intervention. The key to unraveling this enigma lies in the concept of a palimpsest, a surface where original writing has been altered or overwritten. In this case, Seti I's son, Ramses Roman II, likely modified his father's inscriptions, chiseling away some of the older hieroglyphs to replace them with his own. Over time, erosion and weathering blended the two layers, creating accidental overlaps that now resemble uncanny mechanical shapes. The helicopter, for instance, emerges from the merging of a winged sun disk and a ceremonial staff, while the submarine might be a distorted combination of a serpent and a royal cartouche. Archaeologists point to telltale signs of recarving, faint traces of the original symbols peeking through, tool marks where stone was scraped away, and inconsistencies in depth and style. Advanced imaging techniques have helped separate these layers, revealing the intended designs beneath. Yet even with this explanation, the visual coincidence remains striking. Side-by-side comparisons show how the overlapping lines form shapes that eerily mirror modern vehicles, a quirk of history that feels almost too perfect. The irony is that this accidental illusion speaks to something deeper about human perception. We're wired to see patterns, especially familiar ones, even where none exist. The Abydos glyphs tap into that tendency, offering a Rorschach test for the modern imagination. Some look at them and see proof of lost technology. Others see the clever handiwork of time and erosion. What's undeniable is their power to captivate, blurring the line between ancient artistry and the stories we project onto the past. Whether viewed as a fluke of preservation or a puzzle yet to be solved, these carvings remind us that history often hides its truths in plain sight, if only we know how to look. Deep in the bushland north of Sydney, where eucalyptus trees tower over sandstone ridges, a series of carvings etched into rock faces have stirred up one of Australia's strangest historical controversies. Known as the Gosford glyphs, these markings appear at first glance to be genuine Egyptian hieroglyphs, pharaohs' names, sacred symbols, even what looks like an inscription mourning the death of a royal figure. But here's the twist: they're carved into rock formations thousands of miles from the Nile, in a region where no other evidence of ancient Egyptian contact exists. So how did they get there? The answer depends on who you ask, and whether you believe humans have always been as disconnected across continents as modern history suggests. The glyphs themselves are undeniably striking. Over 250 symbols sprawl across the rock, including clear depictions of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the dead, and the name of King Khufu, builder of the Great Pyramid. Some inscriptions tell a dramatic tale of explorers shipwrecked in a foreign land, burying their leader under the stars of an unfamiliar sky. At face value, it's the kind of discovery that could rewrite history, proof that ancient Egyptians sailed to Australia long before European colonization. But a closer look raises red flags. Many glyphs are carved at eye level with crisp, unworn edges, unlike authentic hieroglyphs weathered by centuries of wind and sand. Even stranger, some symbols are mirrored or mashed together in ways no trained Egyptian scribe would ever commit. Linguists have dismantled the glyphs' legitimacy piece by piece. Several symbols come from different dynastic periods, some separated by over 1,000 years, an impossible mix for a single expedition. Others are outright fabrications resembling no known hieroglyph. The clincher, the inscriptions include the name Jedefer, Khufu's successor, spelled incorrectly by modern conventions. This would be like finding a medieval manuscript with Shakespeare's name misspelled in modern font. Yet the story takes a curious turn when you examine the local context. In the 1970s, a man named Alan Dash, a Yugoslavian immigrant and amateur Egyptology enthusiast, was known to frequent the area with chisels. Neighbors reported seeing him working on the carvings, though he never publicly claimed responsibility. Some believe he intended the glyphs as an artistic homage, never expecting them to be taken as genuine. Others argue they were meant to attract tourism to the region, a prank that spiraled out of control. But what if there's a middle ground? Indigenous Australian oral histories speak of people from across the water visiting long before Europeans, and the nearby Kariong area has rock art some argue resembles other ancient seafaring cultures. While the Gosford glyphs themselves are almost certainly modern, they tap into a deeper, more tantalizing question. Could there still be traces of pre-colonial contact hidden in the landscape, waiting to be found under layers of more obvious hoaxes? For now, the glyphs remain a curious blend of artistic mischief and cultural longing, a reminder that even false relics can make us question how much of the past we've yet to uncover. Rising from a quiet field in Elbert County, Georgia, the Georgia Guidestones stand as one of the most baffling modern monuments, 6 slabs of pale granite arranged like a cryptic Stonehenge, etched with directives that read like a survival manual for a future apocalypse. Erected in 1980 under mysterious circumstances, these 20-foot-tall stones bear identical messages in 8 languages: English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, Chinese, and Russian. Each set of instructions urging humanity toward balance, sustainability, and most controversially, drastic population control. Unlike ancient symbols whose creators are lost to time, the Guidestones arrived with a paper trail, yet their true origins remain as opaque as the motives behind the Great Pyramid. The stone's messages are disarmingly simple yet chilling in their implications. The first commandment, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, suggests a world where 95% of the current population has vanished. Other directives advocate for harmony with nature, controlled reproduction, and a universal language, all framed in sterile, almost clinical terms, as if left behind by an advanced civilization or a committee of detached futurists. The monument's centerpiece, a slot aligned with the sun during solstices and equinoxes, adds a layer of celestial reverence, tying its message to cosmic cycles. What makes the Guidestones uniquely unsettling isn't just their content, but their anonymity. Funded by a man using the pseudonym R.C. Christian, who claimed to represent a group of loyal Americans, the project was executed with military precision. Stonecutters recalled being paid in cash, while the local banker hired to facilitate the deal described Christian as polite but eerily determined, vanishing once the stones were in place. Conspiracy theories exploded. Were they a warning from elites predicting collapse? A blueprint for eugenics, or perhaps an art project gone viral, its irony lost in translation? The controversy crescendoed in 2022 when an explosion damaged part of the structure, followed by its complete demolition, officially due to safety concerns, though many saw it as an erasure of uncomfortable truth. Now only fragments remain, their warnings scattered like shards of a broken prophecy. The Guidestones' short existence echoes a paradox. Ancient symbols endure because their meanings faded into abstraction, allowing reinterpretation. But modern enigmas, stamped with urgent specificity, provoke not wonder but fear. They force us to ask, were these the ramblings of a fringe group, or a genuine caution carved in stone for a world barreling toward catastrophe? Either way, their absence now speaks as loudly as their inscriptions once did, a reminder that some messages are too unsettling to stand unchallenged. Deep in the temple of Hathor at Dendera, a stone relief bathed in golden torchlight has sparked a debate that straddles the line between mythology and science fiction. At first glance, the so-called Dendera light looks shockingly out of place, a bulb-like object cradled by a pair of pillars, with a serpent coiled inside like a glowing filament. To modern eyes, it's irresistibly reminiscent of an electric lamp, complete with what some claim are wires and insulators. This single carving has become a cornerstone for theories of ancient lost technology, with proponents arguing its proof the Egyptians harnessed electricity millennia before Tesla or Edison. But to Egyptologists, the truth is far more fascinating and firmly rooted in the sacred. The key to understanding the relief lies in its original context. It's part of a larger tableau depicting the nightly rebirth of the sun god Ra, a central theme in Egyptian cosmology. The bulb is actually a jed pillar, a symbol of stability, intertwined with a lotus flower representing creation. The serpent, that's the deity Harsomptus, a manifestation of the sun's life-giving energy, often shown emerging from the lotus as dawn breaks. The entire scene is a masterpiece of religious symbolism, where the wires are ceremonial staffs wielded by priests, and that lamp base is the heavens supported by the god Shu. Modern misinterpretations often strip away this layered meaning. Pseudo-archaeologists zoom in on isolated details while ignoring the inscriptions flanking the relief, which explicitly describe a ritual involving the solar bark's journey through darkness. Technical comparisons to Crookes tubes or early light bulbs crumble when examined closely. The filament serpent lacks any connection points, and the insulators are standard artistic conventions for divine halos. Even the temple's construction works against the electricity theory. Without metal wiring or evidence of insulated chambers, there's no infrastructure to support such technology. Yet the enduring allure of the Dendera light speaks to something deeper than factual errors. It reflects our tendency to project contemporary frameworks onto ancient cultures, to assume they must have shared our technological obsessions. The real marvel isn't a fictional light bulb, but it's how the Egyptians encoded complex theology into stone, using symbols that could convey the sun's cyclical rebirth to initiates and illiterate laborers alike. The relief's power comes not from misplaced futurism, but from its authentic connection to a world where light wasn't a product of tungsten and current, but of gods and cosmic order. Archaeologist Dr. Miriam Ayad, who spent decades studying Dendera, offers a compelling perspective. The ancients didn't need light bulbs to achieve the extraordinary. Their mastery of celestial mathematics, their ability to align temples with solstices, these were their advanced technologies. The relief's true brilliance lies in its poetic efficiency, a single image collapsing time, divinity, and natural cycles into a form that still makes us pause even if we misread its message. Perhaps that's the real secret of Dendera, not hidden electricity, but art so potent it tricks modern minds into seeing their own reflection in the past's sacred shadows. Etched into the stark desert plains of southern Peru, the Nazca Lines stretch across nearly 200 square miles of cracked earth, colossal figures and geometric patterns so vast they only make sense from hundreds of feet in the air. A hummingbird with wings wider than a jumbo jet, a spider longer than a city block, spirals and trapezoids that vanish into the horizon like runways for giants. These aren't just random scratches in the sand. They're a meticulously planned landscape of symbols carved by the Nazca people between 500 BC and 500 CE that continue to defy simple explanation. What's astonishing isn't just their scale, but their endurance. In a region where winds whip at 70 miles per hour and rainstorms can erase weaker marks in minutes, these lines have clung to the earth for 2,000 years, as if time itself refuses to touch them. The secret to their preservation lies in the desert's own contradictions. The Nazca artists didn't carve into stone. They peeled away the sun-baked top layer of rust-colored pebbles, exposing the lighter, mineral-rich soil beneath. This created a visual contrast visible from miles away, while the compacted lower layer resisted erosion like a natural concrete. But the real marvel is how they engineered these geoglyphs to last. By digging just a few inches deep, they avoided disrupting the delicate balance of the desert floor, allowing morning mist to condense along the grooves and harden the exposed earth. It's a masterclass in working with nature rather than against it, a feat modern engineers still study, yet purpose remains the biggest puzzle. Early theories painted the lines as an astronomical calendar, pointing to solstice sunrises or constellations like the Pleiades. Some alignments do match celestial events, like the massive zigzagging lightning god that frames the Milky Way during the December rainy season. But newer research suggests the lines were more than a celestial map. Excavations near the figures reveal pottery shards, food offerings, and traces of ritual fires, hinting at ceremonies where pilgrims walked the lines as sacred paths. The hummingbird, monkey, and orca glyphs might represent water spirits' pleas for rain in one of the driest places on Earth. The most haunting perspective comes from the Nazca's own descendants, the Quechua people. Oral traditions describe the lines as wasi, or ritual pathways connecting the living world with the spiritual realm. From this view, the glyphs weren't meant to be seen from above by human eyes, but by gods, or perhaps by the ancestors looking down from the sky. Modern drone footage reveals an eerie detail. Many lines converge on distant hills where platforms suggest priests once stood to observe ceremonies unfolding across the desert like a living tapestry. What lingers isn't just the how or the why, but the Nazca's silent rebellion against oblivion. In a civilization that left no written records, these lines are their voice, a shout carved into the earth that outlasted empires, conquests, and the shifting sands of time. They remind us that symbols need no translation when they're etched with such intention. Whether prayers, star charts, or something we've yet to imagine, their power lies in their persistence. A message not written in ink, but in the land itself, waiting for us to read between the lines. High in the mist-shrouded mountains of China's Bayanhar Range, a story persists about an archaeological find so bizarre, it blurs the line between legend and conspiracy. The tale begins in 1938 when a professor named Kai Pu-te reportedly discovered a series of caves containing neat rows of ancient graves, but these weren't ordinary burial sites. The skeletons, barely over 4 feet tall with unusually large skulls, would have been curious enough, but it was the artifacts beside them that sparked an enduring mystery. Hundreds of stone discs, each roughly 12 inches across and carved with a continuous spiral of microscopic hieroglyphs unlike any known writing system. These were the Dropa stones, objects that would later become one of archaeology's most hotly contested enigmas. The story takes its strangest turn when, according to claims decades later, a Chinese scholar named Tsum Nui supposedly deciphered the discs in 1962. His alleged translation read like science fiction. The texts described a spacecraft crashing into the mountains 12,000 years ago, its stranded extraterrestrial crew, the Dropa, slowly integrating with local tribes. This explosive interpretation first surfaced not in a peer-reviewed journal, but in a Soviet magazine called Sputnik, complete with tantalizing details. The discs contained crystalline metals, vibrated at unusual frequencies when placed on special platforms, and bore electromagnetic properties defying their supposed Stone Age origins. Mainstream archaeologists point to glaring red flags. No original excavation records from 1938 survive, and Kai Pu-te himself appears in no known academic registers. The sensational 1962 translation emerged during the Cold War's peak, when space race propaganda blurred facts and fiction, most damning. Despite extensive searches, no museum or university has ever produced an authenticated Dropa stone for analysis. The few discs that surfaced in private collections were proven to be by common Neolithic jade artifacts with decorative swirls, and certainly no microscopic writing. Yet the legend persists, fueled by intriguing crumbs of plausibility. The Bayan region does host ancient burial caves, and local folklore speaks of small, yellowish beings who descended from clouds. Some theorists argue that even if 99% of the story is fabrication, there might be a kernel of truth, an unknown Neolithic culture using discs for ritual purposes, their true meaning lost to time. Others see the tale as a cultural Rorschach test, reflecting mid-20th century anxieties about UFOs and nuclear technology more than actual history. What lingers isn't just skepticism or belief, but the human craving for mysteries that defy institutional explanation. The Dropa stones, whether elaborate hoax or misunderstood artifacts, tap into something deeper than academic debate. They represent the allure of the unanswered, the stories we tell when the past refuses to fit neatly into textbooks. And in that sense, their power endures not in museum display cases, but in the shadowy borderlands where archaeology meets imagination. Beneath the waves off the coast of Antikythera, a Greek sponge diver's accidental discovery in 1901 would shatter our understanding of ancient technology. Among shattered statues and corroded coins, a lump of bronze no larger than a shoebox lay encrusted with centuries of marine growth. But when archaeologists pried it apart, they uncovered not treasure, not gold or gems, but gears. Dozens of interlocking bronze gears, arranged with such precision they could track the movements of stars, predict eclipses, and even calculate the dates of Olympic Games. This was the Antikythera mechanism, a device so advanced it wouldn't be matched for over 1,000 years, and etched across its surface, a labyrinth of symbols, not decoration, but instructions for a machine that blurred the line between clockwork and celestial prophecy. The mechanism's engravings are a marvel of condensed knowledge. Tiny Greek letters crowd between bronze teeth, labeling dials that model the cosmos. One spiral scale tracks the Saros cycle, a pattern of eclipses repeating every 18 years, marked with glyphs warning of ominous celestial events. Another dial, engraved with the zodiac and Egyptian calendar months, syncs the sun's path with cultural timekeeping. But the most haunting symbols are those hidden inside, pin and slot mechanisms that mathematically correct for the moon's elliptical orbit, a feat of engineering so sophisticated it predates Isaac Newton's laws of motion by nearly 2 millennia. These aren't just carvings, they're the fingerprints of a mind that saw the heavens as a puzzle to be mechanized. How did such technology emerge in the 1st century BCE, only to vanish for centuries? The answer lies in the mechanism's context. Recovered from a Roman shipwreck carrying looted Greek treasures, it likely came from Rhodes, home to legendary astronomers like Hipparchus. Here, scholars theorize a fusion of Babylonian celestial math, Greek craftsmanship, and Alexandrian ambition birthed this one-of-a-kind device. Unlike static monuments, the mechanism was portable genius, a teacher, a calculator, perhaps even a showpiece for wealthy patrons. Yet no other examples survive. Was it too expensive to replicate? Did wars or the collapse of Greek academies silence this branch of innovation? The mechanism's symbols hold another clue to its isolation. Recent CT scans reveal previously hidden text, a user's manual etched into the bronze. Phrases like "the station of the moon at mid-eclipse" and "spiral divided into 220 parts" confirm its purpose as an astronomical tool. But the language is dense, technical, almost secretive. This wasn't meant for common use, it demanded expertise. In a world where knowledge was power, the mechanism might have been a closely guarded relic of elite science. Its workings understood by only a few before being lost to shipwrecks both literal and historical. What lingers isn't just awe at ancient engineering, but a humbling question. how many other Antikytheras lie undiscovered or worse, crumbled to dust? The mechanism is a time capsule from an alternate timeline where the scientific revolution could have begun 2,000 years earlier. Its symbols whisper of a road not taken, proof that brilliance flickers unpredictably across history, leaving us to wonder what else our ancestors knew, built, and ultimately forgot. In a dimly lit basement of Baghdad's National Museum rests an object that shouldn't exist, a humble clay jar, no taller than a coffee mug, with a copper cylinder and iron rod nestled inside. Discovered in 1936 near Qujat Rabu, this unassuming artifact has ignited decades of fierce debate. Known as the Baghdad Battery, its design is suspiciously precise. The copper tube, sealed with asphalt, isolates the iron rod perfectly, leaving just enough space for an acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice to act as an electrolyte. Fill it with the right solution and the chemistry is undeniable. It produces a measurable electric current. The question isn't whether it could function as a primitive galvanic cell, but whether ancient Mesopotamians 2,000 years ago intended it to. Experimental archaeologists have put the theory to the test. Replicas wired in series can generate up to 2 volts, enough to electroplate silver onto copper, a technique known to Parthian craftsmen. In 1978, German Egyptologist Arne Egerbrecht demonstrated this by using a reconstructed battery to gild a figurine with gold leaf. Skeptics counter that no electroplated artifacts from the period have been conclusively linked to such devices, and no wires or connectors have ever been found. Could the battery's purpose have been more mundane? The asphalt seal fits neatly with regional storage practices. Some propose it held sacred scrolls, with the metal rods merely reinforcing the jar's opening. Yet ritual use can't fully explain the design's electrochemical efficiency. The choice of metals isn't arbitrary. Copper and iron form a classic voltaic pair, and the asphalt's impermeability suggests containment of liquids, not just preservation. Intriguingly, the jar's shape mirrors those described in 1st century Greco-Roman texts for storing electric eels, creatures whose numbing shocks were used medicinally. Was the battery a tool for healers, delivering mild currents to treat pain? Or perhaps a temple marvel, powering static charges to animate idols' eyes or simulate divine energy? The silence of contemporary records deepens the mystery. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, no Parthian texts mention electrical experiments. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence after all. How many modern technologies might leave no paper trail if our civilization collapsed? The Baghdad Battery forces us to confront an uncomfortable possibility, that ancient innovators might have stumbled upon concepts we consider modern, only for that knowledge to vanish in history's cracks. Whether it powered workshops, dazzled worshippers, or simply stored saffron, its very existence whispers of a past more inventive than we dare assume. What lingers isn't just curiosity about its function, but humility. We're left holding a fragment of a conversation we don't fully understand, a reminder that the ancient world's ingenuity might still surprise us, one charged discovery at a time. In a dim corner of the Cairo Museum, surrounded by golden sarcophagi and towering statues of gods, rests an unassuming artifact that has sparked one of Egyptology's most unexpected debates. The Saqqara bird, a 6-inch-long wooden figurine carved from sycamore, looks at first glance like a child's toy, an elegant falcon with wings swept back as if mid-dive. But look closer and the details unsettle expectations. The wings aren't stylized like typical avian art. They're precisely angled with a distinct curvature along the leading edge. The tail flares vertically, unlike any bird in nature, but strikingly similar to the stabilizers on modern aircraft. Discovered in 1898 among funeral objects near the Saqqara necropolis, this 2,000-year-old relic now sits at the center of a controversy that pits mainstream archaeology against a tantalizing what-if Could the ancient Egyptians have understood principles of aerodynamics centuries before Da Vinci sketched his flying machines? The conventional explanation seems straightforward. Many scholars classify the artifact as a ceremonial falcon, perhaps a representation of the sky god Horus, or a decorative finial for a ritual vessel. Similar bird figurines have been found across Egypt, often clutching shen rings symbolizing eternity, yet none share the Saqqara bird's peculiar geometry. Its wings lack the typical feather detailing of sacred avian icons, and the undercarriage bears marks suggesting it once had a separate, now missing component, possibly a pedestal, but just as plausibly a launching mechanism. In 1969, the discrepancies caught the attention of Dr. Khalil Messiha, an Egyptian physician and aviation enthusiast who became convinced it wasn't a bird at all, but a scale model of a working glider. Wind tunnel tests added fuel to the fire. When aerodynamics experts from Cairo University's Faculty of Engineering reconstructed the figurine in 2006, they discovered its proportions generated surprising lift. The wing's upward angle and airfoil-like cross-section performed comparably to early 20th century monoplane designs, while the vertical tail prevented destabilizing yaw. Critics argue these results prove little after all. Nature's own birds evolved efficient aerodynamic forms, and the figurine could simply reflect intuitive observation of flight. But proponents counter with an oddity. No known Egyptian bird species holds its wings at this exact angle during gliding. The Saqqara bird's posture matches neither a falcon's dive nor a vulture's soar, but something unnervingly mechanical. The debate takes a stranger turn when examining contemporary texts. While no papyrus survives detailing aviation experiments, the Legend of King Bladud from roughly the same era describes a British monarch who crafted wings and met his demise attempting flight. More puzzling are the temple reliefs at Abydos, where some claim to see helicopter-like shapes, though most archaeologists attribute these to palimpsest effects. If the Saqqara bird was a toy, why are there no others like it? If it was a ritual object, why deviate so drastically from established artistic conventions? Perhaps the truth lies in the middle ground. The figurine's craftsmanship suggests it held special significance beyond mundane play, possibly a blend of form and function, like a wind vane for ceremonial boats or even a teaching tool for apprentices studying natural forces. Its creator may not have understood Bernoulli's principle, but could have empirically recognized that certain shapes caught the wind more effectively. In this light, the Saqqara bird becomes not proof of ancient aviation, but a testament to humanity's timeless fascination with flight, a dream carved in wood long before science made it soar. Whether divine symbol, clever toy, or accidental prototype, its silent wings still whisper across millennia, daring us to reconsider where ingenuity truly begins. Buried in the hardened sediment of a Texas creek bed, a rusted metal hammer was discovered in the 1930s, its handle partially petrified and its head fused into rock dated to over 400 million years old. The so-called London Hammer has become a flagship exhibit for proponents of out-of-place artifacts, objects that seem to defy conventional timelines of human history. At first glance, it's an irresistible paradox. How could a clearly man-made tool become encased in strata from the Devonian period, an era when Earth's most advanced life forms were primitive ferns and jawless fish? Creationists seized on the hammer as proof of divine intervention or advanced prehistoric civilizations, arguing that mainstream geology's dating methods must be flawed. The hammer's design adds fuel to this fire. Its wrought iron head shows a level of metallurgical skill consistent with 19th century blacksmithing, yet its encasement suggests it predates dinosaurs. Some even proposed it was left behind by time-traveling humans or extraterrestrial visitors. But before we rewrite history, let's dissect the rock itself. Geologists counter that the hammer isn't nearly as ancient as its rocky shell suggests. The sandstone concretion around it, while old, isn't a sealed time capsule. Minerals in groundwater can accumulate around objects relatively quickly, especially in porous rock. Modern analysis reveals the hammer's head contains traces of 20th century industrial chlorine, hinting it might have been a miner's lost tool from the 1890s, encased through natural cementation in decades rather than millennia. The petrified wood handle, a trick of preservation. Certain minerals can replace organic material surprisingly fast under the right conditions. The hammer's real value lies not in debunking geology, but in exposing how easily our eyes deceive us. Context is everything in archaeology. An object's surroundings, whether sediment layers or tool marks, often tell a richer story than the artifact itself. The London hammer endures as a cautionary tale about confirmation bias, reminding us that extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence, and sometimes the simplest explanation, a modern tool trapped in ancient-looking rock, is the one that holds the most weight. In a vault at Yale University's Voynich Library, a book unlike any other waits silently for a reader who may never come. The Voynich Manuscript, named after the Polish book dealer who acquired it in 1912, is 240 pages of pure enigma. Its parchment, carbon dated to the early 15th century, is covered in a flowing, alien script, a language of looping characters that form words and sentences, yet resist every attempt at translation. But the text is only half the mystery. Flip through its pages and you're plunged into a surreal dreamscape. Naked women bathing in emerald green pools connected by elaborate plumbing, constellations that match no known sky, and plants with roots like animal claws, their leaves labeled with names that mean nothing to any botanist. This isn't just a cipher, it's a window into a mind or an entire world view we've lost the key to. For centuries, the manuscript has been a lodestone for codebreakers and scholars. World War II cryptographers, fresh from cracking Nazi Enigma machines, took one look at its script and admitted defeat. Statistical analysis reveals patterns resembling natural language. Word lengths follow predictable distributions, and certain characters repeat like consonants or vowels should. Yet nothing aligns with any known tongue, living or dead. Some theorize it's an elaborate cipher, hiding Latin or Hebrew beneath layers of substitution. Others argue it's glossolalia, the written equivalent of speaking in tongues, never meant to carry meaning. The most tantalizing possibility, that it's a lost language, perhaps from a marginalized culture erased by time, its last whispers trapped in vellum. Recent AI deep dives have only deepened the intrigue. In 2019, researchers trained algorithms on hundreds of languages, hoping the machine might spot patterns human eyes had missed. The results were equal parts promising and perplexing. The text showed faint structural similarities to Hebrew and Arabic, leading to a partial translation that suggested herbal and astrological content, but the output was riddled with inconsistencies, like a radio tuning in and out of static. Skeptics point out that AI can find false patterns in randomness, just as we see shapes in clouds. Then there's the hoax hypothesis. Could the manuscript be an elaborate Renaissance prank? Its timing overlaps with a golden age of forgery when clever artisans crafted dragon skeletons and fake relics for wealthy collectors. The argument gains traction from the botanical illustrations. Many plants are impossible hybrids, like a flower with strawberry leaves and daisy petals. But carbon dating confirms the parchment's age, and the ink shows period-appropriate chemistry. A forger would have needed prescience to fake materials so flawlessly centuries before modern testing. Perhaps the truth lies in the manuscript's very strangeness. Marginal notes in clumsy Latin suggest it passed through the hands of Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph Roman II, who collected curiosities and funded alchemists. Was it an experimental code for recording forbidden knowledge, herbal remedies deemed too pagan for church approval, or astronomical ideas that risked heresy? The zodiac section's peculiar star charts might support this. They depict celestial configurations impossible in our universe, yet meticulously detailed, as if mapping an alternate cosmos. What makes the Voynich Manuscript uniquely haunting isn't just its resistance to decoding, but the intimacy of its obscurity. The scribe's hand is confident, the ink strokes swift and practiced. Whoever wrote this understood it perfectly. The women in those green baths smile as if sharing a private joke, while the unreadable labels on fantastical plants tease us with the ghost of meaning. It's a reminder that the past isn't a puzzle to be solved, but a conversation we've only half overheard. Every breakthrough, from AI to carbon dating, brings us closer not to answers but to better questions. And maybe that's the point. Some doors stay locked not because we lack the key, but because what lies behind them wasn't meant for us at all. Hidden in the manicured gardens of Shugborough Hall in England, an unassuming stone monument holds one of history's most stubborn secrets. The Shepherd's Monument, built in the 1700s, features a carved mirror image of Nicholas Powson's famous painting The Shepherds of Arcadia. But it's the series of letters beneath that has obsessed codebreakers for centuries. 8 simple characters, OUOSVAVV, framed between 2 enigmatic Ds. At first glance, they look random, but their strategic placement suggests a riddle meant to outlast its creators. This is the Shugborough inscription, a cipher so resistant to decoding that even WW2 cryptographers and computer algorithms have thrown up their hands in defeat. What makes this code uniquely frustrating is its context. The monument was commissioned by the Anson family, wealthy landowners with rumored connections to secret societies like the Knights Templar and Freemasons. Some theorists believe the inscription points to the Holy Grail's hiding place, citing Powson's painting, which features a tomb with the Latin phrase et in Arcadia ego, even in Arcadia I am, as another clue in a grand treasure hunt. Others think it's a personal memorial cipher, perhaps encoding the name of a lost love or family motto. The most compelling solutions often tie into local history. One reading suggests the letters stand for Optimi Uxoris Optimi Sororis Vidus Amantissimus Vavet Virtutibus, best of wives, best of sisters. A most devoted widower dedicates this to your virtues, referencing Admiral George Anson's grief after his wife's death. Yet every theory unravels under scrutiny. The Templar connection hinges on the monument's mysterious benefactors, including the elusive Prior of Sion, a shadowy figure linked to Grail legends. But historians note the Anson family's documented interest in antiquities and art, not occultism. Even the much-touted Solution by renowned codebreaker Oliver Land in 1982, claiming the letters conceal a Latin prayer, was later debunked as speculative. Modern cryptanalysis adds another layer of intrigue. Statistical patterns in the letters resemble linguistic structures, ruling out pure randomness, but no consistent cipher method, Caesar shifts, anagrams, or acronyms has cracked it definitively. The inscription's true power lies in its simplicity. Unlike the Voynich Manuscript's sprawling complexity or the Phaistos Disc's ornate symbols, this cipher reduces mystery to its bare essentials: 8 letters, 2 brackets, and a question hanging in the air for 300 years. In an age where we can decode ancient genomes and predict cosmic events, the Shugborough inscription remains a humble reminder that some puzzles weren't meant to be solved, only pondered. Whether it guards a treasure, a love letter, or an inside joke lost to time, its silence speaks louder than any solution ever could. Across centuries and continents, these ancient symbols share a haunting common thread, not just in their indecipherability, but in the patterns of their silence. Why do so many scripts vanish without descendants? Why do cultures separated by oceans carve eerily similar shapes? The answers, or lack thereof, reveal as much about humanity as the symbols themselves. Take the recurring motif of spirals, found from Neolithic Vinca tablets to Polynesian petroglyphs. Were they mere decoration, or a universal shorthand for concepts like cycles, journeys, or celestial motion? Without a living tradition to explain them, we're left guessing, projecting modern biases onto marks that may have held meanings we can't conceive. Consider the role of ritual in preserving and obscuring these symbols. The Rongorongo tablets of Easter Island weren't mundane records. They were sacred objects, their glyphs likely tied to chants known only to elite priests. When those traditions collapsed, the knowledge died with its keepers. Similarly, the Indus Valley seals, stamped with unicorns and cryptic glyphs, might have encoded trade agreements or prayers, but if their purpose was esoteric, meant to be understood only by initiates, their full context is forever lost. This sacred secrecy raises a chilling possibility. Some symbols weren't designed to be universally legible. They were insider codes, and their creators never intended them to speak across millennia. Then there's the specter of hoaxes muddying the waters between discovery and deception. The Gosford glyphs and Burrows Cave artifacts remind us how easily wishful thinking can distort history. Yet even fakes reveal something profound, our desperation to connect with the past, to find evidence that ancient peoples were more advanced or interconnected than we believed. The allure of these symbols lies in their ambiguity. A carved spiral might be a sun symbol, a whirlpool, or a scribe's idle doodle. Without definitive proof, they become mirrors reflecting what we want to see. Perhaps the most sobering truth is that some mysteries resist resolution simply because time erases too much. The Vinca script, if it even was a script, flourished when writing was still in its infancy. The few surviving examples might be fragments of a system too sparse to reconstruct, like trying to guess a novel's plot from a handful of torn pages. And while modern technology, AI, spectral imaging, database cross-referencing offers new tools, progress is painstaking. The Phaistos Disc remains unreadable not for lack of effort, but because its uniqueness isolates it. Without a bilingual text or related inscriptions, it's a locked door with no key. What endures is the paradox these symbols embody. They were made to communicate, yet now defy understanding. They remind us that history isn't a clear narrative, but a palimpsest, layer upon layer of half-erased stories waiting for someone, someday, to piece together a sentence from the silence. And that's the real lesson. Not every cipher will be cracked, not every language revived, but the attempt itself, the act of reaching across time to touch the mind of another human who thought these marks worth making, that's where the magic lies. In the trying, we honor their voices even if we never hear them speak. From spiral carved tablets to submerged stone glyphs, these 30 symbols stretch across millennia and continents, each whispering a different secret in a language we're still learning to hear. Some, like the Phaistos Disc, taunt us with their isolation, unique artifacts without siblings to compare them to. Others, like the Indus Valley script, repeat endlessly on seals and pottery, yet their meaning dissolves like ink in water. What binds them together isn't just their mystery, but the way they force us to redraw the map of human ingenuity. The Vinca symbols predate Sumerian cuneiform by thousands of years. The Rongorongo script emerged on the world's most remote island. The Fuente Magna bowl hints at connections between continents we never knew existed. These aren't just puzzles, they're proof that history's timeline is far messier, far more interconnected than textbooks dare to suggest. Think about what it means that a Bronze Age gear system like the Antikythera mechanism could model the cosmos with precision unmatched until the Renaissance. Or that the Nazca Lines, designed to be seen only from the heavens, endure in a desert where storms erase lesser marks in hours. These symbols challenge our assumptions about how knowledge spreads or doesn't. Could the similar spirals on Neolithic artifacts and Polynesian petroglyphs be coincidence or evidence of some deep, shared human vocabulary? When the Tartaria tablets echo Sumerian cuneiform millennia before its time, are we seeing cultural contact, convergent invention, or simply our own pattern-seeking minds at work? But here's the most humbling truth. Some of these symbols may never surrender their secrets. The Rohonc Codex's 400 unique glyphs, the Voynich Manuscript's unreadable herbal recipes, they might remain silent forever, not because we lack cleverness, but because the contexts that birthed them are gone. The Rapa Nui elders who could chant Rongorongo's meanings perished in slave raids. The last scribe who understood the Byblos syllabary took its key to their grave. And yet, their very indecipherability teaches us something profound. These symbols weren't meant for us. They were conversations between people long turned to dust, rituals frozen in clay, star maps for ceremonies we'll never witness. Their power lies not in what they reveal, but in how they make us feel, like detectives standing at the edge of a locked room, ear pressed to the door, hearing only faint echoes. So what do you think? Could the Dropa stones really chronicle an ancient crash landing, or are they just Neolithic crafts misread through modern eyes? Is the Baghdad battery evidence of forgotten science, or a wine jar with an oddly placed rod? Drop your wildest theories in the comments, because history's greatest unsolved puzzles deserve fresh voices. And if these 30 symbols left you hungry for more, you're in luck. From the Georgia Guidestone's ominous warnings to the underwater ruins of Yonaguni, our next dive into archaeology's enigmas is already in the works. Until then, keep questioning. The past isn't a monologue, it's a conversation, and we're just starting to listen.